So the other day I saw a really cool text effect on a banner of a video game or an advertising. I don't remember what it was. And I thought of creating something similar to that. And I came up with this text style. Now, it's not exactly like that one. That one was more 3D. I think it was 3D text actually. But I thought of creating something similar in Photoshop. And this is what I came up with. So today I want to show you how I created this text effect. We will use advanced styles. It's not difficult, but we're going to use something a bit more advanced because I also want to show you how to work with layers. So we're going to use layering because the text, the blue text that you see here is actually 3 layers and the one on the bottom are 2 layers. So I want to show you how to combine layer styles between different layers to create this text. And just a quick demonstration here. You can download this PSD file for free. The link is on the video description. And if you're watching this from my website, you will find it underneath the video player. And just to show you, this is actually, you will find, if you open this PSD file, you will find the layers here. Okay, so all you need to do is, you have 2 smart objects for both texts, and all you need to do is just double click to open it and change the text. Let's put PSD box just so you can see that it works. I'm gonna save this. And you can see how it looks like. Also, the fonts are free. You can find the fonts also listed on the video description and also on my website. So just by changing the text, you can see that you're going to change the text effect. And the text effect is actually inside of this group over here that says text effect. And by the way, if you deactivate these layers, if the bottom text goes gray, just check inside the text effect group that it doesn't, you don't have the fill set to 0 here. So that being said, let's jump right into it. I already created the canvas. It's 1200 by 800, a really small canvas. And I just put this texture of wood here because it's always a good idea to have some texture on the background. If you just have white or black, the styles and the blend modes will not interact with that background really nicely. So always have a texture there, and if you're doing this for a video game or for something, or for a wallpaper or something, have the background that you know that text is going to go with, because you will be able to see how it interacts with it. So with this, I'm just going to go to filter, camera raw. I just want to add some, actually just darken it. So I'm just gonna drop the exposure a little bit, increase the clarity. Go to effects, drop the post-crop vignetting, and just do something like this, and that's pretty much it. Just darken this thing a little bit because it's gonna look a lot better. And this will be my background. Now, I'm gonna start typing the text. I will not add that shield over there. This is just for presentation. And let's name this Viking. Now the font that I used is called PR Viking. It's a free font. You can download it for free. As I said, the link is on the video description, but you can use any font. And I will put this one here and just copy it. And with another font, I will type the word wars. And the second font is Viking Hell. Viking Hell regular. And I'll put this to 100 maybe, or 160. Okay, now I have both texts. I'm going to select both of them, make sure they're centered. Now, if you want people to be able to change the text and change the whole style and not having to go through each layer, what you have to do is use a smart object. So basically what you do is turn both of them into smart object, 1 and 2, and this will be the templates. Now I will create a copy for each of them. It's important to create a copy, not to choose new smart object via copy, because if you just simply press Ctrl Command J or Alt click and drag to create a copy, they're exactly the same, which means if I now change the text in here and save it, it's gonna change the other that's underneath. Okay, so you'll see that in just a second. Now my copies, I'm gonna drag them right over here. I don't need them. This is just my template, and I'm gonna drag the fill to 0. Now I don't need those because I already have them here. So let's name this, group them, and type here to change text. If you want to give this to somebody that has no idea of how to work with Photoshop. So just click here and just direct them to change the text, and the text will change here as well. Okay, let's start working on this. Now, as I said, I work with 3 layers, and all of them are copies of that master smart object that I have here. So this is the first one. Let's name it Viking Top. And then I'm going to create another one, which will be Viking Middle, and a third one, which is Viking Bottom. Now, I will do the same with the Wars Top, and then another copy, which will be Wars Bottom. I just have 2 for this one because it's a simpler layer style. Now let's group them, and Wars. It's always a good idea to name your layers and have organization in the layers palette. I actually just published an article yesterday talking about 7 common errors that Photoshop beginners do, and one of the errors was not naming their layers or groups and not organizing things in the layers palette. Okay, let's start with the Viking. Let's hide that one for now. And even though I'm gonna put the styles in the resources folder, which you can download, by the way, for free. Link is on the video description and also on my website. So you could just grab the layer style for each of these layers and just drop it in here and just get the style. But I just want to show you how I created that style. So for the Viking Top, I changed the color of the text, and it's important to do that on the master. So let's reopen the master, and I have it on gray, but I have the black point to 50%. Okay, save it, and let's do the same with Wars. Double click it and put this to 50, somewhere around 50%, because this will affect the effect itself. Now, the reason why I did not give it a color is because I want the user to be able to change the color accordingly to whatever they want. So that's why I used gray. This is just for the luminosity value. So let's hide that now. And on the Viking Top, let's start with a drop shadow, or actually let's start with the bottom because it's the simplest one. Now, on the bottom one, I only have a few styles. The first one is a stroke effect, and I have the size at 5 pixels. Now, by the way, the values that I use here, if you're using a really high resolution image, a really big canvas, you might want to have different values here because this actually will change. And 5 pixels, it's a very low value because the text is bigger than the original one. So I will just use 15 or something like that. And instead of using the file type to color, I will choose pattern. Now, you will have to create your own pattern for this because I added a wood texture here. You can choose from the patterns that Photoshop comes with. Right over here, you can see them. And here I have a list with even more, but I just wanted to create my own pattern. So let me show you how to do that. Let's open this texture. I download this texture from textures.com. It's a seamless wood texture. So just open it, go to edit, define pattern, and just give it a name. I'm gonna give it wood. Click OK and close this. And that's it. The pattern is created. It's there on the library. Now go back to the Viking Bottom, stroke, and choose pattern. And now you will see the wood is here. So just select that, and now we have that wood as the stroke and not a color. Okay. Now we're good to go, and I'm gonna just drop this to maybe 10 instead of 15, the stroke size, and make sure it's on the position is set to outside. I want to add another one. Actually, the second stroke will be underneath the one that has the wood. Now, if you're using an older version of Photoshop, you will not be able to have multiple strokes in the same layer. So you will have to apply that layer and then come back to the layer style. So that's kind of it's not a good way to do it. It's more time consuming. So this might work a lot better in Photoshop CC. Now, on the second stroke, I have on the outside, it has to be a little bigger than the first one because otherwise it's not going to stick out from behind that wood. So on the other one, I said I had 10. Here I'm going to put 12. Yeah, 12 is okay. This second stroke is just to show the edges a little more and just kind of have more contrast on the edges. Now you will learn that when you're creating text styles, more often than not, it's a lot better idea to use really subtle changes and not really crazy effects, because it's gonna look really weird and cheap, to say it that way. Now we're done with this. Let's add some drop shadow as well, just so we have some shadow on the background. Now this will be the base because this is on the bottom, so the rest of the effect will be inside of here. Now let's go to the Viking top, because this is where the main effect is gonna be. So open the layer styles and let's start with a color overlay. You will see that I already have some multiple styles here because I already created this and they just remained here. But if you don't have them, just add them from here. Okay, from this list on FX, you have the list here. So on the first color overlay, we will set this to the blend mode to overlay. The color is B8EBEF. This really light blue. If you want to have a different color, just use a different tone. But be aware that you'll have to be consistent with that color, and on the rest of the styles you have to use similar tones. Then I have a gradient overlay, and I have this from black to transparent. I'm going to reset the gradients back to transparent, set it to vivid light, and opacity 36%. This is the effect that we get, and the scale I'm going to drop it to 90%, and just move this around until you get something like that. Make sure the style is to linear and the angle is minus 90 degrees. So we have to darken the bottom part of the text. The next style is an inner shadow. The color of this is 336D8B. The angle to 105 degrees, distance 0, choke about 30, and the size, I have it to 5, but as I said, it depends on how big or how thick your text is. You just want to have this bright line along this to create some separation. Then we have a stroke, and this I have it to 2 pixels, type color, and the color is 50E0FF. So another blue tone. The blend mode here, let's try multiply. Yeah, see, with the multiply we create this. You can try others, but multiply looks kind of cool, I think. And then we have the 3D effect that I achieved using bevel and emboss. So activate bevel and emboss, and here choose inner bevel. The depth to 150, size 76 pixels. Then let's go to the shading part. Here I have the angle to 130 and the altitude to 48 degrees, and the gloss contour I have it to this one over here. I think it's called Gaussian. Now let's go with the colors, because you can see it's not looking really that good. And for the highlights, I have the color 47BBE6, this blue, and I have the blend mode to vivid light at 100%. And then the shadow mode, I have it to linear burn, and the color code that I have is 6EB7FB. And I set the opacity to 89%. And this is what it gives us this tone. You can slightly change these tones and create your own, but I found this one looks pretty good. Now I also activated the texture setting here, and what this does is creates a kind of a embossing thing, the bas relief effect here, and I have the scale of this to 25%, 15% on the depth. So you just want a subtle effect here, just to create some texture over the text. You can choose different textures. This is the wood one that I created. You can use pretty much whatever you want, but you don't want to have something really that strong. So drop the depth until you get just a touch of effect there to have some texture and not have such a plain text. Probably 2 for this texture is okay. Now the depth will have to be different depending on the texture. Some textures have more contrast and they will show up a lot more on the text, and some of them have less texture, are more plain, so you have to increase this. Okay, I'm gonna leave it for this one to about 18. Also, if you want to have the negative effect, use negative value. So -5, I think for this one, I think it's gonna work. I forgot to add some drop shadow also, just to create some separation between the wood and the text. So drop shadow, obviously this is too much. I'm gonna have 0 for the distance. Here I have 10, and for the size I have 6. Okay, so just check it out. Just a tiny shadow. I don't know if you can see it, but it's enough to create separation. Now, since this text is a bit bigger than the original that I have, I will use the size of about 8 just to add a little more shadow. Okay, now we're done, but we still have to add some styles to the middle text. So let's go to the Viking Middle, the layer styles here, and this is what is gonna blend both the top and the bottom. Now the styles that I have for the Viking Middle is just bevel and emboss. So activate bevel and emboss, and here we're gonna use pillow emboss on the style. You can try others, but I found that this one worked well. Depth 160, 168 actually. Size 5 pixels. Angle 144, and 53 degrees for the altitude. And I'll start with the linear. Yeah, I think the linear works well. And on the highlight I used color dodge, and the color is D97409. And for the shadow mode I have this on color burn, and the color code is 1E99CD. And I have this to 93%. Okay, and this is the effect. Now, if you don't like this color, use white. I think it's gonna look better. Yeah, I think this one looks okay. I don't know. On the Viking top, I will probably use a bigger shadow, a bigger drop shadow here on the size, and probably more spread. Increase the spread and also the size a little bit, and I think it's gonna look better that way. Okay, now we're done with the Viking. Let's go with the second one, with the wars. So let's activate that group. This one is easier because we have less styles. Now actually I'm gonna drop the wars on top because the shadow of the Viking text is bigger and it's gonna cover it, and I don't want that. So for the wars top, I have first I'm gonna start with the drop shadow. Just do it by eye, just want to have something there to darken the background a little bit. And then I started with a color overlay. Again, I have this on a vivid light, and the color is FD9F3B. I will click OK. And then I have a pattern overlay. Now, if you have the color overlay on normal, the pattern overlay will not be visible. So that's why I had to use a blend mode here. Otherwise, the pattern overlay will not show through that because the color overlay is gonna hide it. And I just used this pattern, which you can see here. By the way, this list is the color paper, and I used this one over here that says leaf. You can use other ones if you want. I have the blend mode of this to color burn, and this is the effect that you get. And then, no, actually, I think I used another texture. This one looks good as well, but I think I used another one. It's called white with wood fibers. Yeah, I think this one looks better. Next, I have some inner shadow. So activate inner shadow. The color code for this is D07458. Angle 105 degrees. You want to have this line over here. I have 0, 14 and 4 for the original, but since this text is a bit bigger, I have to use bigger values. So I will use like maybe 6 or so. And next, some bevel and emboss as well. So activate that. Now here I have the style to inner bevel. I have the depth to 150%, size 10, soften set to 0. Technique chisel hard, the same as here on the Viking text, I forgot to mention it. Then we have the angle to 149 and the altitude to 42. You can use the same as here if you want. Style to linear. Now you can see that it's not looking really that good. I have to increase the depth a little bit. Oh, not the depth, the size, because this text is bigger. So I'm going to use 15 for the size so that it ends up on an edge right here. Next, let's go to the highlight and shadow modes. On the highlight, I have this to color dodge. And the color code, you can see that it actually works without even changing the color because the color dodge is really strong. But I'm going to give you the color code that I use anyway, which is DBBA49 for the highlight. For the shadow mode, I have the blend mode set to multiply, and the color code is E03A00. Okay, this is how it looks like. Now I dropped the blend mode, the opacity, sorry, to 80% on the bottom one. If you think it's too strong, use different blend modes, or different tones. Maybe that one was too red, so I'll probably use something darker. I think it's actually looking better. And for the color dodge as well, just drag this down a little more so that the texture is a little more visible. We're good to go. I'm going to click OK, and let's go to the Wars bottom. And here I have just one style. I'm just double click to open the layer styles again. And I have bevel and emboss here. This one I have on outer bevel, chisel hard, depth 150, size 2, but this text is bigger, so I'm going to put 4 or actually 5. Then angle 116 degrees, and the altitude to 5 degrees. On highlight mode, I have this on screen, otherwise it's not going to be visible. And I have the color set to white. You can see that the border starts to show up now. And on the shadow mode, I have this to linear dodge add. Here you can use pretty much any color you like. I used 65 ADFF, this blue, but you can use other ones. Maybe green would look cool as well. Actually, I think it looks cooler even. For my taste, the border is too big, so I'm going to use a smaller size, just 4, or actually even less, just 2 maybe. And that's pretty much it. That's how I created this layer style. As I said, you will have these styles saved on the resources folder with the corresponding names. So you'll have Wars bottom, Wars top, Viking top, middle, and bottom, so that you can use them and see how I created them. Again, you also have the PSD file with the styles already applied, so you can get them from there as well. I also have another tutorial showing how to create a video game text style, and I'm going to put a card here so you can go and check it out if you want to. If you liked this tutorial, I hope you give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel, subscribe so that you get more tutorials like this. I publish almost every week, and that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on the next tutorial.